The plan was to video the whole trip. There's been so many nice views that I've wanted to stop and take videos of or take photos of, but obviously I can't use the phone or the camera while I'm driving, and Cooper hasn't mastered using the camera yet, so yeah, we haven't taken many photos or videos along the way because we're just trying to get there on time. So we set off on Tuesday afternoon at around 3:30 from Malaga and made it to a place which is just about 2 hours from Malaga, so we didn't make it very far, but we stayed in a free camper van parking spot that had clean water and waste disposal, and right next to it was a dog park. Wednesday morning we drove for 6.5 hours, made it past Madrid, and I stayed in a campsite that there was nobody else staying on, just me and a few people living there. So we stayed there last night. I'll put some pictures and videos of where we stayed, and this morning we set off about 10 o'clock and we've got about an hour and a half to go. Yeah, and Cooper is getting pissed off, so maybe we need to stop soon, but because a border collie does not sit still in the car for very long and does this, we get off the dashboard.
So at this point I decided to give up trying to record anything informative and decided to do some time-lapse videos of the remainder of the journey. The closer we got to Cantabria, the more it started to look and feel quite like the UK, with like the mountains and the green, and just started feeling really like Wales to me. So we eventually arrived in our destination, which was a small town called Vega de Pas, which is a very, very small town in Cantabria, and this is where the house project that we have come to work on is located. One of the first things I noticed being majorly different when arriving in Cantabria and in Vega de Pas was the amount of water around you. So there's like rivers and streams, and you can hear the water running while you're walking through the streets. Whereas in the south, the lakes have dried up, the rivers are dry, there's water shortages, that's really hard to say, and water restrictions. Whereas in Cantabria, there was just water in abundance, there was water everywhere. Another thing that felt very similar to Wales for me was this kind of scenery of like a country walk with old stone walls and then sheep. There were sheep everywhere. Cooper decided that he was going to use his inner sheepdog and try and herd the sheep. He absolutely loved it in Cantabria. And while I was there, I had a lot of friends messaging me asking me if I was back home, because they were seeing my videos on Instagram and thinking that I was in Wales. So it wasn't just me that was feeling that it looked very much like Wales in Cantabria. So after having a quick explore around the village, my neighbour from Malaga came and picked us up and took us up to see the house renovation project. The house is quite remote. It's about 3 kilometres walk from the town, and it can only be accessed by 4x4 and quad bike to a certain point, and then the rest of the way is on foot. So this is the renovation project. It was originally used to store cows, and you see them everywhere in Cantabria still being used. So the cows live in the bottom of the building and the owners live in the top of the building. Another similarity that Cantabria has to Wales is that it is famous for a lot of rain. So my neighbour's main priority while here was to get the roof fixed on the house. He had already replaced some of the beams and the slats on the front of the house on a previous visit, so we began by insulating this part of the roof. So one of the main challenges with this project was getting the materials from the bottom of the mountain up to the house. Once the installation was complete, we needed to bring up the metal panelling from the bottom of the hill and get it on the roof. We were able to get it to a certain point using the 4x4. We could have carried it the rest of the way, but there was a lot of them. They were quite difficult to carry, so we decided the quickest and easiest way was to attach 3 at a time behind the quad and drag them the rest of the way using the quad bike.
Bye bye, good luck.
That's where you don't want it coming off.
With 4 of us in total doing this work, we managed to get it done a lot quicker than we'd anticipated. So the next task was to remove all the clay tiles from the other side of the roof, then to assess the quality of the beams underneath the tiles and whether some of them were salvageable or whether they needed to be replaced. Thankfully most of the beams were okay, just a couple needed repairing, so we then began to put the wooden slats on the other side of the roof. However, then in true Cantabria style, the weather started to take a turn. The weather predictions were showing that a storm was heading our way. The roof was becoming a little bit slippy and unsafe, so I at that point headed back to my van. But of course not before Cooper has a swim in the river that we pass on the way back to the van. This river was a godsend because it got him super clean before getting back into the van. So we did get a heavy storm. It was thunder and lightning and hailstones, and of course my roof window leaked. Those of you who know me personally know that a year and a half ago I lived in a house where Christmas time the whole roof leaked and there was water coming into my whole house. This is just my luck. And obviously the whole irony of the whole trip being here to help fix somebody else's roof. So after a little bit of a restless night and news that there was more bad weather on the way, meaning that the work was going to be postponed, we decided to pack up everything, me and Cooper. It's where we were staying in Vega Pass. It was very pretty, but it was very remote. There was not many resources there. With the lack of sunlight during the storms, I wasn't getting much power, so I decided to head out of the mountains and head towards the coast. So I headed towards Santander and drove around some of the beaches there along the coast looking for a nice place to park for the evening. I used the Park for Night app and went to see a few of the recommended locations in the area and finally settled on this one. So I found quite a few of these dedicated camper van parking places on the Park for Night app, which I found really helpful. They usually are located on the outskirts of the city and generally have clean water and grey water disposals. All of the ones that I stayed at were completely free, so I didn't have to pay for any of these parking places, and I always felt really safe staying at these places because you're surrounded by other camper vans. This one was about a 10-minute walk from the beach and about a 35-minute walk into the centre of Santander. I stayed in Santander for 2 nights. I did some sightseeing. I investigated getting the ferry back to the UK, which ended up looking like it was going to be around €1,600 because I needed a dog cabin. So that plan was scrapped, and then the weather looked like it was about to take a turn again, so we headed towards another beach town called Laredo. When I arrived in Laredo, I have to be honest, I wasn't too impressed with the area. I visited a few parking sites and they all had no camper van parking signs. We kind of felt a little bit unwelcome. I looked on the Park for Night app for other places to park and they were all sort of streets lined with houses, and the weather was so gloomy you couldn't really see anything or appreciate anything, so I decided to head to a campsite. You spend the afternoon cleaning the van, doing some laundry, catching up with some emails and messages, and deciding where I was going to head next. I also took the opportunity to finally replace my back brake light. I had bought the part almost 3 weeks ago when I reversed into a lamppost and just hadn't got around to putting the new one on yet. So we woke up the next morning, same old story, doom and gloom weather. My mood is very dependent on the weather. The night before I'd googled where it was going to be sunny the next day and it had suggested San Sebastian. So I took a little walk around the area for Cooper to have a walk before getting in the van. We made friends with a horse and gave him some grass, then headed back to the campsite to pack up the van. We had a quick Zoom meeting with a client who also suggested going to San Sebastian, so that's what we did. The sun was finally shining, there was camper vans absolutely everywhere, and it just had a completely different feel to how I'd felt when I was in Laredo. There was an official camper van parking zone as well in San Sebastian, but when I arrived it was full, So I parked slightly down the road with all the other camper vans in the free street parking. Street parking was free because it was the weekend, so it cost me absolutely nothing to be parked there for all of Saturday and Sunday. The parking was around a 15-minute walk down to the coast, so that's where we headed. I really liked the feel of San Sebastian as soon as I arrived at the coast. The ocean was blue, it was beautiful, there was people swimming, there was people surfing. It just had everything going on, and it had a really nice feel to it. There seemed to be like 3 distinctive parts of the coastal area. So there was the beach where there was people enjoying the sand and the sun and surfing and swimming. And then as you carry on further along the coast, you go through this really cool watery tunnel, and you come out and it's more hustle and bustle. There's more buildings, there's tourist attractions, lots of restaurants. There was the port with boats and tapas restaurants and fish restaurants. And there was another section where you headed into the old town, where there was loads of quirky shops and restaurants and tapas restaurants just everywhere. The whole town had a very vibrant feel to it that made you want to keep exploring it more. However, Monday morning came and our free parking was up, so we decided to hit the road again. This time heading back to Malaga, which felt like it went on for absolutely hours, which I think it did. SatNav decided to redirect me onto what it called a better route. I have questions. It took me through mountain ranges, it took me through dirt tracks, it took me through tiny little towns. It took me this route to avoid going through the centre of Madrid, but honestly the amount of time that it added to the journey, I would not recommend it, and I would head straight through Madrid next time.